Nature is usually a transaction. It demands a trade-off. If you want a fruit that is tough enough to survive a storm, you must accept a skin that is thick and often bitter. If you want a fruit that is sweet and meltingly soft, you must accept that it will die in the frost. But in the frozen corners of the world, there is an exception, a plant that breaks the fundamental laws of botany. Imagine a fruit with the soul of a Soviet tank and the skin of a silk moth. It thrives in temperatures that would shatter the engine block of your car. It blooms when the ground is still buried under 3 feet of solid ice. And yet, the berry itself is so incredibly delicate that it cannot be touched by a machine. If you toss it into a plastic bin, it does not bounce. It vanishes. It dissolves into a pool of crimson ink. This creates a paradox. We have a plant that can survive the apocalypse, but cannot survive a trip to the supermarket. Because of this, modern agriculture made a decision. They decided that you should not eat it. They decided that it was too inconvenient for their trucks, and therefore it was irrelevant to your health. For 50 years, this genetic masterpiece was hidden away, first by the ice of Siberia, and then by the silence of the industrial food system. But the silence is ending. This is the honeyberry, the ghost of the grocery store. Welcome to Ancestral Garden. To understand why this plant matters, we must leave the modern world behind. We must open the ancient archive. We must travel back to the snow-covered islands of Hokkaido and the desolate, windswept peninsulas of Kamchatka. Long before modern science analyzed its DNA, the Ainu people of Japan had already unlocked its secret. They did not have microscopes. They had instinct. They called this berry Haskap. In the old language, it translates roughly to the berry of long life and many presents. Think about that for a moment. In a landscape where winter tries to kill you for 6 months of the year, they did not pray to the cherry blossom. They prayed to this humble blue fruit. They saw it as a biological miracle, because while other plants were still sleeping under 3 feet of snow, the Haskap was already waking up, pushing its small, yellow, trumpet-shaped flowers through the ice, signaling that life had returned. It was the lotus of the north. But the story does not end in ancient Japan. It moves to the Cold War. In the mid-20th century, the Soviet Union faced a strategic crisis. They needed a condensed source of vitamin C for their people living in the far north. But citrus trees, lemons, and oranges are weak. If you plant an orange tree in Siberia, it does not produce fruit. It turns into a sculpture of ice. So Soviet botanists looked at what was already surviving. They saw the wild honeyberry growing where nothing else could. They realized that this plant had evolved a unique mechanism. It does not fight the cold, it embraces it. For 50 years, behind the Iron Curtain, they bred these plants in secret horticultural stations. They were not breeding for looks, they were breeding for potency. They selected the wildest genetics to create a fruit that tastes like a collision between a raspberry, a blueberry, and a glass of deep red wine. It has the sweetness of the forest, the tartness of the northern wind, and a complex tannic finish that lingers on the tongue. It is a flavor that feels ancient. So when you taste a honeyberry today, you are not just tasting fruit, you are tasting history. You are tasting the genetic memory of a plant that learned how to survive the apocalypse. But if this plant is a master of survival, why is it missing from your breakfast table? Why is the blueberry the king of the grocery store, while the honeyberry remains a ghost? The answer is uncomfortable. It is because we have traded nutrition for convenience. Let's look at the evidence. Go to your kitchen and take a commercial blueberry. Cut it in half. What do you see? The skin is blue. but the flesh inside is pale, greenish, translucent. The medicine is only skin deep. It wears a mask of health, but inside it is empty. Now imagine cutting open a honeyberry. The flesh is not white. It is a violent, deep purple all the way through. It is saturated with the very compounds that keep it alive in the frozen north. But that same saturation is its commercial death sentence. The skin of a honeyberry is meltingly soft. It is so delicate that if you fill a deep crate with these berries, the bottom layer will be crushed by the weight of the top layer. You do not arrive at the supermarket with fruit. You arrive with juice. And then there is the scar. This is the detail that killed the honeyberry's career. When you pick a blueberry, the wound heals instantly. It seals itself shut. But when you pick a honeyberry, it separates from the stem with what botanists call a wet scar. It leaves a tiny opening where a single drop of ruby red juice can escape. To a food corporation, this is a defect. It stains the packaging. It creates a mess. It creates a shelf life of only 3 days. It ruins the clean, sterile aesthetic of the supermarket shelf. So the system made a choice. They chose the blueberry because it has a thick, waxy armor that can be tumbled into bins and shipped across the ocean without bruising. They chose the fruit that survives the truck instead of the fruit that survives the body. The honeyberry was not lost because it was inferior. It was erased because it was too real. But nature rewards the brave. That deep, violent purple color is not just for show. It is a chemical shield. Scientists call it C3G, or cyanidin-3 glucoside. Think of it as a biological antifreeze. This compound is what allows the honeyberry to bloom while surrounded by ice without its cells shattering from the cold. And when you consume it, that protection becomes yours. Let's look at the hard numbers from the University of Saskatchewan. A standard commercial blueberry contains roughly 160 milligrams of anthocyanins per 100 grams. The honeyberry, it clocks in at up to 1,500 milligrams. That is not a small difference. That is a 750% increase. In clinical studies, C3G has been shown to be 3.5 times more potent than the analogs found in vitamin E. It does not just scavenge free radicals, it actively modulates inflammation at the cellular level. It calms the fire inside the aging body. And then there is the myth of the orange. We have been told for decades that oranges are the gold standard for vitamin C, but the data tells a different story. A single handful of honeyberries, about half a cup, delivers more vitamin C than 3 oranges combined. And crucially, it does this without the massive insulin spike of fructose. You are not eating sugar water, you are eating condensed survival. So, you might be thinking, if this plant is such a biological miracle, it must be impossible to grow. It must be a diva like the blueberry. And this is the final twist. In the garden, the blueberry is a nightmare. It demands acidic soil. It demands peat moss. It demands sulfur. If the pH of your soil is not perfect, the blueberry turns yellow and slowly starves to death. But the honeyberry? It is the anti-diva. It does not demand you to change your soil. It grows in heavy clay. It grows in sand. It grows in silt. It accepts the land exactly as it is. It requires no chemicals. It requires no fuss. It simply requires a partner. This is the only rule you must follow. The honeyberry is not a solitary creature. It is not self-fertile. You must plant at least 2 different varieties, like Aurora and Borealis, or the Beast and the Beauty. They need each other to cross-pollinate. If you plant one, you get a lonely bush with pretty flowers. If you plant 2, you get a harvest that can last for 50 years. By planting this, you are doing something rebellious. You are reclaiming the hunger gap. While your neighbors are still waiting for their strawberries to ripen, you will be walking into your backyard, filling buckets with the first fruit of spring. The industry cannot sell it to you. They cannot ship it. They cannot control it. So the only way to taste it is to grow it. Plant the history. Harvest the resilience. The knowledge was never lost, only ignored. I am from the Ancestral Garden. See you in the next digging.